Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about a little bit of the NFL draft, breaking down some of the recruiting rankings and how they kind of tied into the NFL draft and how the recruiting rankings are doing pretty well of predicting what's going to happen in the NFL draft. You know, the five stars being the first rounders really is working out for them as of right now. But let's get into some quarterback situations. We had tons of guys go in the first round of the NFL draft, 6 guys. We had 11 overall taken in the draft, but let's start with the 6 first round guys, and if we got some time, we can break down briefly the guys that were taken a little bit later. But let's start with Caleb Williams, the guy that everyone is talking about that has created a new hand signal for the Bears, it seems. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that is coming into the league with about as much eyes on him as anyone I can remember. And it partly is because, being the number one pick that comes with the territory, right? But also, it's who he is. He has a lot of different ers and ahs to his personality that some people don't love, some people like. It'll make him a very, very interesting quarterback to watch. But let's talk about some of the tangible aspects that I think makes this a really awesome situation for him, to be totally honest with you. The 3 receivers that he has is an embarrassment of riches. When you talk about Keenan Allen, you talk about one of the most professional route runners in the entire NFL, a guy that rarely makes any drops, a guy that can absolutely be a great third down piece for him, along with Cole Kmet, who is a fantastic tight end that is only getting better throughout his years. I think they're set up there with 2 guys that you can count on day in, day out, will not have to worry about a ton of drops, will not have to worry about them getting, mad about targets or anything like that. You can actually just sink your teeth into those 2, let those 2 be your crutch, and then you have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze to have a little bit of fun. DJ Moore obviously can get down the field as a huge deep threat, and I think that's something that they're absolutely going to use Caleb Williams for. He's someone that can extend plays, that can absolutely launch a ball off pretty much any platform. So having someone like DJ Moore will unlock Caleb Williams a little bit more, and you'd be shocked how easily it can be for this guy to get that confidence and flip that switch. Sometimes it's just one deep ball that goes perfectly into the pocket of DJ Moore for a touchdown, and this kid's rolling. So I think that's a huge pickup for them. And then you talk about Rome Odunze, who is someone that I think if you could have paired a young receiver with an old receiver, you would have done you would have been up hours trying to figure out a better duo than Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen. I think they fit together very, very well. Now, Rome Odunze has a little bit more of that stretch the field mentality than Keenan Allen does, but when you talk about route running, when you talk about the incredible hands, when you talk about just the professionalism on the football field, both of those guys are as good as it gets in the NFL. So I think while Rome Odunze, I think, is ready to contribute right away, I think he'll only get better throughout the season. And then once Keenan Allen's career comes to an end, he's going to be right ready to take over that role and be a huge piece for them. So really love that pick. I think it's something that you just needed to surround him with as many pieces as possible. And then you talk about the running game, brought in DeAndre Swift from the Eagles. I don't know why I blanked on where he was. Brought him from the Eagles. They have Khalil Herbert on the team. I think this is a solid running game. You don't necessarily have that big name that is going to be your down in, down out back, but you do have DeAndre Swift, who will likely be the 25s between 25 back, 25-yard line between 25-yard line, and then Khalil Herbert, the other 25, to kind of finish off drives, be that short yardage guy whenever you need him. And DeAndre Swift helps him out a ton when it comes to the passing game because he's great in screens. He's great just getting open, getting his hands on the ball, and then finding his way downfield any which way. So I think that's a great pickup there. O-line is only getting better. Now there still are some steps that need to be taken. Now you do have Caleb Williams, which makes that look a little bit better than it probably would normally, but the O-line is going to be solid, I think, for years to come. When you have guys like Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright on both sides of your line, you got to feel pretty good about the future. Those guys are only going to keep getting better and only going to keep getting more comfortable in this league. And especially having someone like Caleb, where if you do make a mistake, he might be able to bail you out, is not the worst thing in the world by any means. And then finally, the offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, I think is a fantastic fit for Caleb Williams. There are certain things with Caleb Williams that you would just love to see him do a little bit more of, with just staying in the pocket a little bit longer, being more confident, mobilizing in that pocket and not bailing as quickly as he does, being able to really push the ball downfield, which was something that Shane Waldron really, really excelled at with Geno Smith a year ago. So I think bringing over a lot of those philosophies, not only in play calling, but also in the way that he coaches up Williams, will make him the player that he's capable of being. Because I think Caleb Williams is fantastic and he can make incredible plays outside of the pocket, but at the end of the day, you want your quarterback to be making most of his plays inside the pocket just to make sure that he is as safe as possible, and I think taking those strides will be absolutely huge. Now, the big question mark here, and the one that is a little bit less tangible but absolutely will be there, is if the first 3 games, the first 4 games, whatever you want to call it, if he starts a little bit slow, it could get ugly pretty quickly. I'll be totally honest with you. And not necessarily in the sense that he will continually roll down this hill and be a terrible player by any means, but the Chicago fans will start to get worried. And there will be certain Chicago fans that already, are a little bit on the fence about him that will be very aggressive and will definitely put this guy under a big-time spotlight, and he'll have to respond. And it's part of the game, right? It's part of being the savior for a franchise. When you walk in the door, a lot of people are expecting a lot from you, and if you don't deliver, you're going to hear about it. So we'll learn a lot about Caleb Williams, not only as a football player and how he's able to, patch some of the holes in his game, but also just as a person, how he's able to handle all the scrutiny that will come his way if he just throws one pick. So it'll be really interesting to see all this unfold. I think Caleb Williams is going to be a great quarterback. I think he has a much better head on his shoulder than people give him credit for. Now, do I know he's going to succeed? No, but at the end of the day, I think a lot of things are in place for him to be the guy that he's definitely capable of being. So it'll be really interesting to watch that unfold, and I think this is a situation where Caleb Williams got to be pretty happy, considering all the other situations that Bears quarterbacks have walked into. But let's move on down the list to Jayden Daniels. This is a little tougher one to peg down, partly because of all the movement that's going on with the Commanders organization and a lot of the different things that are happening around there. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of the things play into Jayden Daniels' hands, and some of it will require him to be the athletic beast that he is, but they've made some strides. I think the O-line got a great upgrade this year, which was absolutely necessary with someone that is a little bit undersized, likes to get himself hit probably a little bit too much, and they'll definitely have a conversation about that. But adding Biotish, adding Nick Allegretti, I think is 2 great guys on the interior of that line. Still definitely need to build out that line much more. Don't necessarily have tons of guys that you feel super confident in, but having someone that can extend plays and be dynamic with his feet definitely helps that a little bit. And then you got to start patching holes. And if they don't patch holes by, his second or third year, then we can have a real conversation about this. But you add, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin at the wide receiver role, and then someone like Austin Eckler, who obviously is not necessarily the running back that he used to be, but still a fantastic receiving option out of the backfield, still a guy that can get you tons of yards after the catch, and will be a great kind of bailout option for Jayden Daniels. So I think that was a fantastic pickup for them. You already have Brian Robinson, who I expect to be kind of the down-in, down-out back, but who knows? Maybe Austin Eckler is able to kind of carve out that position as the receiving back and be on the field more often, but having that guy on the field can only really help Jayden Daniels. And then I do love this offensive quarterback fit. I think there was a little bit of worry around Cliff Kingsbury, because of his time in Arizona, but I think he's plenty capable of putting together a really good offense. I just don't think head coaching was necessarily the position he was supposed to be in. So I think he's well equipped to handle the quarterback that Jaden Daniels is because of the athleticism, the dynamic ability. He had guys like Kyler Murray. He's had guys like Caleb Williams a year ago at USC. So I think it just fits into Jaden Daniels, what he's going to be capable of doing early on. And then they'll have to evolve as that time goes on, as the O-line gets a little bit better, as the weapons get a little bit better around him. So I think there's a ton of different things going on around the Washington Commanders right now, but I think there's a huge thing that kind of plays into his favor is this is a totally new era. You have a new coach, a new quarterback, and most importantly, new ownership. You brought in Josh Harris, who is the owner of the 76ers right now, and this essentially just gives you the ability to say, we picked our quarterback, we know who that is. Now let's push our chips to the center of the table. Now let's start making moves to not only make us a contender, but make us a Super Bowl player. And it'll be really interesting to see all that develop. Now, the right buttons have to be pushed, obviously. You have to bring in the right guys. You have to do the right things. But at the end of the day, I think this is something that they absolutely can make work as long as, the ownership is willing to push their chips to the center of the table and give Jaden Daniels the necessary pieces to succeed the way that he can. But it's an absolutely more of an uphill battle than it will be for Caleb Williams, but I think he has the ability to reach his lofty ceiling in Washington. I think a lot of the things that are there play into who he is. So we'll watch that unfold and we'll see what happens, but I like that situation maybe a little bit more than some others do. But let's get over to Drake May, and this is the sketchy one. At least right now, this is the very sketchy one. You have the Patriots are not in a great spot on the offensive side of the ball, don't have a ton of proven playmakers at wide receiver or tight end. The O-line is solid, I guess, is the best way to put that, but not necessarily what you want it to be. The beauty of the Drake May situation is, in my opinion, they have time. The consensus opinion that I've seen around the draft and around these quarterbacks has been Drake May needs to sit a year, and I fully agree with that. I think sitting behind Jacoby Brissett will give him the chance to learn the things that he needs to learn, but not only that, will give the front office of the Patriots the chance to build out the things that they absolutely have to build out, because Drake May is not a quarterback that is going to be able to fully succeed at the next level if not given protection, if not given the receivers that he needs, because we saw it at UNC. The O-line was not great. The wide receivers and the playmakers on the outside were not great at all times, and it created some situations where he went into Superman mode and made some mistakes. So you need to surround this kid with the right situation. He's a remarkably talented kid, and honestly, I think he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL in the future. But at the end of the day, they have to push the right buttons to make that happen. They got Jalen Polk, they got Javon Baker, who I think are two great wide receivers that can help them in the future. They have Austin Hooper and Hunter Henry on the roster at tight end to help him out a little bit as he gets going, but more needs to happen. I don't think there's any question about that. I think this can become an elite situation where you have a new coaching staff, you have a new way of thinking, and they're willing to take some of those risks, but you got to press the right buttons, you got to do the right things, and it's not necessarily the best situation. In fact, I would argue it's one of the worst situations among the rookie quarterbacks, but that's for now. There's plenty of things that can happen between right now and when he touches the field that can make this a much better situation than it is currently. But let's move on to the shocking pick in the most confusing situation, Michael Penix Jr. This came a month or two after you gave over $100 million to a quarterback. Definitely not what Michael Penix wanted, I would say pretty confidently. I think he was expecting to probably go to Las Vegas or go somewhere where he was going to be the starter from the get-go, because he is an older guy and he's likely ready to start. But this is a situation that I think if they can thread the needle, and they really will have to thread the needle with the way that they handle this situation, but if they can, it could be an incredible situation that he's walking into. So the Falcons obviously have a very talented young trio. You talk about Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London. Now Kyle Pitts still has a little bit of work to do when it comes to filling out that lofty expectations when he came in, but has had some injuries, has had some stuff that are a little bit out of his control. I think he'll have a really good year, honestly, with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, but you have Bijan Robinson, you have Tyler Algier, you have an offensive line that at the very least is solid. Probably will take some building out a little bit more throughout the next couple of years, but still a good room, and you'll have the run game to go along with the pass game that hopefully comes. And then Penix, in my perspective, is a guy that he can start in the NFL right away. I don't think there's any question about that, but I do think there are a ton of benefits that he can learn from Kirk Cousins over the next 2 years to when he does touch the field, he is the best version of himself. And all of those things are very nuanced things, especially in the NFL. When you talk about reading coverages, I think there have been some zone coverages in the college level that totally confused Michael Penix and forced him to be a little bit inaccurate, getting hit on some plays and then letting that kind of carry over into the next play, and the way that you go about your business has been something that Penix has really struggled with. I think Penix has the ability to have a remarkable career at the NFL level. I just think some of those things need to be patched, and maybe sitting behind Kirk Cousins for 2 years is the exact way to do that. Now, you would be trotting out a 25-year-old to make his very first start in the NFL, but maybe it's a 25-year-old that's ready to roll. Maybe it's a guy, they're not the same situation at all. I've seen people kind of compare them, but they're not. The Jordan Love type idea where you have a guy who's sitting, but then when he gets out there, he's absolutely ready to rock, is something that I think the Falcons are hoping for. They're totally different situations, of course, because they just signed Kirk Cousins, but it's the same principle of, you let a guy work out some of the kinks, and then when he gets on the field, you don't have to work out any of the kinks. You don't have to worry about getting into week 6 and worrying about his ability. So I think this is a situation that has the highest variability. It could go any number of ways. You could have, a weird relationship between him and Kirk Cousins that could get a little bit contentious and hurt kind of the dynamic there. You could have, just the not the right buttons being pressed, whether it's personnel wise or in the locker room or whatever that is for the Falcons. But I do think there is a situation where it can be nearly perfect when you watch it on the field. I think there's a situation where it could be an absolute nightmare. And it'll totally matter what the front office does over the next couple of years. It'll totally matter how him and Kirk Cousins get along. And it'll totally matter how Michael Penix handles the situation. So this is a weird situation. This is one that I don't necessarily envy if I was in Michael Penix's situation. But honestly, if everything goes the way that the Falcons in their head have this going, it could be insanely beautiful the second he touches the field, and this offense could absolutely be soaring in a couple of years. But that's banking on the Falcons making a lot of right decisions. So we'll see what happens there. I have faith in Michael Penix to, do the things that are necessary, but it's going to be interesting to watch. Let's put it that way. But let's move on down to J.J. McCarthy, and I think this is the best situation, at least from the outside looking in. I think when you look at the roster, when you look at the head coach, when you look at some of the infrastructure already there, there's a lot in place for J.J. McCarthy, and it obviously starts with Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the game, has a catch radius that is bigger than anyone that I've ever seen, just absolutely remarkable, makes a lot of not-so-good throws look really good. Then you have Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson to add to that receiving core. So this is about as good of a group as you could possibly hope for if you're J.J. McCarthy, especially someone like J.J. McCarthy who is going to need some time to ramp up the ability to take over a game, to be the passer down in and down out. But having all those guys around him definitely helps that. The O-line is incredibly solid, mainly because of Christian Darrisaw, one of the best left tackles in the entire league. Protecting JJ's blind side definitely makes him feel a lot safer, especially as a smaller quarterback who, given the right hit, could encounter some injuries during his career. Having someone protecting your blind side that is that good is a huge bonus. But then the most important to me is having Kevin O'Connell in your corner. This is a guy that all of his quarterbacks, the best thing about them and the thing that made them so successful was throwing over the middle of the field. And that was always the thing that JJ did incredibly well in college. And it's honestly a little bit surprising him being a little bit, of a smaller stature. Some of those guys struggled to throw over the middle of the field. This guy did not. He was incredible when it came to navigating the pocket, finding the open window, and then just dialing a ball in there. So it's going to be a huge part of his success at the next level. I think Kevin O'Connell knows that, and I think he's going to drop a lot of stuff whether it's kind of mesh concepts where you have two people coming over the middle of the field, giving him options, or it's posts over the middle of the field, whatever it looks like. I think this offense really does play into the hands of what J.J. McCarthy does the absolute best. So this is a situation that I really, really love. Now, can J.J. McCarthy handle being the guy that has to throw 25, 30 passes a game, has to do some of the things that he wasn't required to do at Michigan, because the run game's probably not going to be as strong comparatively to Michigan at the college level. Very few in the NFL are. It's likely that the defense isn't quite as strong as Michigan was comparatively. So there's some more things that are going to be on his shoulders, but if he can take him in stride, this is a situation that this kid could absolutely thrive in and make a lot of people really mad because there are some people that are not the biggest fans by any means. But finally, let's get to Bo Nix, and this one's just weird. I'll be totally honest with you. I think Bo Nix has tons of ability. I think he is a guy that actually, between him and Sean Payton, I think the fit is actually really good, but the team is just not very good. Let's be totally honest with you. There's nothing that really stands out from the running back or wide receiver position. Now, you did add Troy Franklin. Marvin Mims is a guy that I think is going to develop into a fairly good receiver. Javonte Williams is good at the running back position, but has had some injuries that make his future just a little bit uncertain. But I think there's an interesting thing that could happen here, kind of the same thing that could happen in New England with Drake May, where this situation as it sits right now is pretty ugly. I'll be totally honest with you. Now, the O-line is going to be relatively solid. You have Garrett Bowles, you have Mike McGlinchey, you have some guys there, but definitely need to build that out a little bit more. The right buttons need to be pressed, and they need to be pressed fairly quickly, because this is a guy that is going to see the field right away and is going to be thrown into the fire. And while I think Sean Payton has the ability to put him in the right situations and make him as successful as possible, he's going to need more around him. He just has to. We saw what happened at Oregon a year ago. When you're surrounded with all of that talent and all of that in that great offensive scheme that Will Stein was running, in that offensive line that gave him plenty of time, the kid can be incredible. His accuracy is off the charts. That is by far his best attribute, and that's something that Sean Payton has gotten a lot of ability out of in the past. You know, you talk about someone like Drew Brees, who his thing was accuracy. He didn't do a ton of, the remarkable Josh Allen type plays because he didn't have that in his bag, but he was going to hit the guy when he needed to be hit, where he needed to be hit, and it wasn't going to cause a lot of problems for your team. So I think this is something that Bo Nix has the ability to be very successful in this league purely because of his accuracy. Because when you look around the league, a lot of the issues with teams is you have playmakers around the field, you have guys that you can get the ball to, but getting the ball to them is 90% of the battle. So Bo Nix can absolutely execute an offense. He can absolutely put the ball where it needs to be when it needs to be there. Will the guys that he's throwing it to be able to not only catch those passes, but also turn upfield, make some plays, help him out a little bit? Because this is not necessarily a guy that is going to take over an offense by any means. He is a guy that can execute an offense and do it really, really well, but you do have to surround him with the right personnel, with the right offensive line, the right wide receivers, and just give him more to work with. But all that being said, I think this is a kid that a lot of people are, laughing at. A lot of people saw the Auburn highlights and just can't get that out of their head, but he's taken a ton of strides, and I think as long as Denver can hit the right buttons, can get the right guys in place, and Sean Payton can get, the Drew Brees type potential out of this kid, there's an ability there that I think a lot of people might not think is there, which is, in my opinion, making deep playoff runs and being a quarterback that signs a second contract and sticks around in Denver for quite some time. But that's probably the biggest if of the group, probably by far, to be totally honest with you. But that'll do it for those quarterbacks. We'll move on from that. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about next year's draft. The odds for the first overall pick came out. We have a mock draft that came out. So I want to break down kind of what that looks like and some players to watch going into next year. So stick around and we will be right back with that.